So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Hey, thanks for watching our live stream. I'm the host, David Creighton. In the meantime, have a look at some of these clips and take the opportunity, please, to like this broadcast, ring the bell, or subscribe.
And we're stepping up in every way we can because we know that Russia must win this war. That Ukraine must win this war.
But freedom is something you earn every day.
I don't know that the government currently has fiscal anchors.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist. Good morning. Welcome to Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Creighton. Happy Sunday. Hope you're on your way to church, synagogue, temple, wherever you want to go to exercise your freedom of religion. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest on the ostriches. Economic catastrophe coming for Canada. $7.8 billion deficit. And what's happening with digital ID. We'll be back in mere moments.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist. So what's happening is Sunday here. This is September 28th. We're getting near the end of the month. We've got economic catastrophe looming. We've got Mark Carney running around the world. And the only trade agreements he can get are with countries we really don't do trade with. We've got the federal government, namely the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, continuing to threaten Universal Ostrich Farms, continue to suppress private property, suppress freedom of speech. We've got two hate laws coming up, or so-called anti-hate laws coming up in Parliament. And we've got potential digital ID. Thanks to the inspiration of Keir Starmer. And what has Mark Carney always said about that? Well, we'll find out in a minute. But I can't wait to show you this this bit with Angela Rasmussen, Dr. Angela Rasmussen. But first, let's have a look at what's happening with the PBO.
Shocking, right? This is not like it's not a funny fiscal outlook.
The public debt charges is $53.6 billion, and that projection is going to increase to in 2030 to $82.4 billion. Is that sustainable?
Every dollar spent on debt is a dollar that is not spent elsewhere.
Again, how alarming is that for the average Canadian, for the taxpayer? Because there is only one taxpayer, right?
It should be very alarming, right? These are, I don't know, I think I used the words in French, and which the translators probably got really well, like stupefying, shocking, right? This is not, like, it's not a funny fiscal outlook. It's a really serious fiscal outlook. And we don't lightly use the word unsustainable, right? Unsustainable means you don't have the option of saying, maybe I'll wait a couple of years, I'll see how things go. It means if you don't change, this is done, right? So it's very serious. we're on the path to being in trouble. So that's what our 5-year forecast, the numbers that we released earlier this week, indicate. That if left unchanged, the fiscal path that the government's currently on will definitely result in us being in quite a bit of trouble and having to make some hard decisions.
Now, in getting here, what do you attribute this to? Is this like Donald Trump's trade policies, you know, the roosters coming home to nest, or is this about government spending priorities and not controlling it?
I think it's kind of a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. So there definitely is an impact in comparison to our previous forecasts. You can definitely see the impact on the overall growth for the Canadian economy. A larger part of it is the government policy decisions. So there ends up being about $115 billion in net new costs since the last time we prepared a forecast back immediately prior to the election in March 2025. And a good part of that is attributable to defense. So changing geopolitical environment, priorities for the government to increase spending on defense, which we saw that was announced in June, earlier this year in June, and of course on the tax side and the revenue side. So $6 billion a year, so about $30 billion over the next year, plus revenue that we're no longer going to have because the lowest personal rate went from 15 down to 14. Mm-hmm. But yeah, certainly a little bit of both, but certainly at this point, it's more on the government.
Okay, so almost a $70 billion deficit. I played that at the beginning because I know a lot of you sometimes are tuning in late, and I wanted to make sure you saw the next portion here because I think this is crucial to what's happening. And like I say, Sundays it's usually 9:30 because I like to get the show on the air early so I can get off to church and do that. But what's happening with digital ID? You know, so here's Mark Carney saying they're planning great things for us. This guy is incredible. So he's in London. He's there with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister also of Australia, and they're all plotting to introduce digital ID. At the same time, Mark Carney has talked about, or at least his Justice Minister, Attorney General Sean Fraser, has talked about 2 hate crime bills. One has been introduced. It's going to be against symbols. And the second is the Resurrected Online Harms Act, which has a thought crimes component. Yes, it will still have that. So Mark Carney is saying he's arrived in London, meeting with my good friend Keir, and leaders around the world are here to strengthen trade and security, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, and it's all about the workers back home. Translation: we're plotting new ways to take power and money away from our citizens. You bet that's what they're up to. Look at the petition against digital ID. Pretty strong. Now, what has Mark Carney said about digital ID? Has he ruled it out for Canada? Absolutely not. Mark Carney.
Paul, there may be.
Keir Starmer's introduced a digital ID card. Wants to make it mandatory as a way of controlling immigration. Is that something Canada might consider?
Well, Paul, one thing I would put in terms of context is the UK is relatively unique in not having other forms of identification. So there's
Hold everything, Marxist Carney. You're telling me the UK doesn't have ID? Okay, we know they have driver's license. Do they have a social security card? Social insurance number? Britain has had a welfare state to some degree since the 1920s when the Labour Party formed government. Now, it started off slowly, but by 1945, when Clement Attlee formed a massive Labour government majority and they started nationalizing all of the industries in Great Britain, and they created the National Healthcare Service. Are you telling me you didn't need ID to access the National Healthcare Service? This is bogus. This is nonsense.
There's been a long history here not to have ID. In Canadians, we have various forms of ID. We have driver's license. You have social insurance license. Like you have forms of identification. In terms of so now
Mark Carney's at his eloquent best here, stumbling, stammering, and he does that in the same way Justin Trudeau used to stumble and stammer and lose his breath when he was lying to you. Mark Carney knows this is not going to be a popular measure, at least with some people, but he's prepared to go for it. And so it sounds like I can just drop into the UK anytime and I don't need ID. Hey, I can just say, don't you know me?
Are there merits to having common digital identification for government services, for you say immigration, also for financial services, portability, other aspects? There may be. We don't have current plans for that.
Thank you.
Maybe. Wait till we get our hate crimes legislation. Wait till we get our hate crimes legislation through. Then we'll get the digital ID, and then we'll get to a digital currency. Do you see what's happening here? The same time, we've got Britain, Canada, Australia introducing or have introduced the Online Harms Act or variations of it, the censorship law, the hate crimes law. They're all doing it at the same time because they're listening to the WEF and their globalist masters. This is the next stage. Britain will go first. Australia and Canada won't be far behind. And there's even a danger of this happening in the United States, despite Donald Trump being president. So this is highly toxic. I was on a chat show last night with 5 other small c conservatives, small l libertarians. One of the guys ran, 2 of the guys actually ran in the last election for the People's Party of Canada. So it's a fairly conservative bunch, ideologically. One of the individuals on the show suggested that digital ID was no big deal. We should be fighting other things. You know what I thought? It's just like the people who sometimes comment on this show and say, why do you keep talking about ostriches? There's more important things to deal with than just these birds. And I'm saying, if you don't understand what these birds have to do with your freedom, with your right to private property, with your right to your livestock, with your right to your livelihood, then look at it closer. Or do I have to say it again? This isn't just about the ostriches, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. And digital ID is just another nail in the coffin of Canadian democracy. And Keir Starmer, he looked at that protest. Millions of people out in London to protest his government. And so what did Keir Starmer do? We're going to double down. And we're going to have digital ID so we can survey you. We can know what you're doing. We can know where you are. We can know what you're buying. That's coming. We can know what your interests are. We can know when you do or say something that might be politically incorrect or might be something we can use against you. This is all about the government getting leverage over your lives. Please understand that. Digital ID is a very bad idea. And here's my good friend Neil Oliver, who I hope will be on the show next week to discuss digital ID and how Great Britain is sliding into totalitarianism and perhaps on the precipice of a civil war. But here's Neil Oliver talking about digital ID.
On a day like this, on an eve like this, when Starmer's going to introduce this tomorrow?
I honestly think we've got them, Bev. I feel uncharacteristically optimistic about it. I've been, desperately furious about the concept of a digital ID card for a long time, and I've been anxious about the possibility of somebody actually daring to bring one forward. But here it is, and I genuinely think that there's enough awareness, more than enough awareness out there in the general population. I sense that there's going to be mass refusal, mass non-compliance. I think this government has rolled the dice. With instructions from on high. I believe the likes of Keir Starmer and his ilk are just factotums. They've had to roll the dice on this, and it's going to be a disaster for them, and will probably, conceivably, be what brings them down.
We're going to be, just in a moment, I'm going to talk to Peter Edwards, who's in the studio in London, who doesn't have such a strong opinion on the negatives of this as you might do, and myself as well. So just explain to the absolute layman, because these conversations are going to have to take place now, why this is problematic. And if you can, Neil, do it like in terms of the real practicalities rather than the ideology of it.
It's the way in which it brings everything together. Everything together, all of the information about us, everything from health, everything about your finances, everything, anything that you can think of that's out there in the digital sphere is brought together by this kind of platform. And everything can be used in real time to make judgments about you, about what you propose to do. It can reference things that you've said in the past, done in the past. It can use anything at all that's on your record. It can relate to protests maybe that you've attended, to things that you've said, to posts that you've made on social media, to your financial status. And in real time, decisions can be made about whether or not you get permission to do whatever it is that you want to do next. Put fuel in your car, buy a plane ticket, buy a steak in a supermarket, buy a bottle of wine, whatever it is that you want to do, a decision can be made in advance. Because what is happening here with digital ID is effectively you are being replaced with an avatar of yourself. If you imagine one of those little pieces that you move about on a Monopoly board that sort of represents you on the board, well, they have you in that digital ID, and they can decide whether or not you get to move on the board. And your hands are effectively tied behind your back. Anybody that submits to this, anybody that accepts a digital ID is slapping handcuffs around their own wrists. It's the end of freedom, it's the end of choice, it's the worst possible decision that any freedom-loving person could possibly make. But as I say, I was pessimistic about it for a while, I'm not anymore. We've got them on this. We have them surrounded. Their arguments don't stack up. None of the reasons that they've put forward for doing this make any kind of sense. The very idea that this is going to tackle the people arriving by boats on the shores of the British Isles is absolute nonsense. It was never supposed to do that. The appetite, the desire to bring forward the digital ID was there years ago. And it was understood by the people that wanted to bring it forward that the British people would not accept it. So problems had to be fomented to make people desperate to accept this as a solution. Hence the opening up of the borders and the mass immigration onto these shores that has stoked division, has stoked fear, and the hope has been that people would accept the digital ID as this solution to the problem. But it's entirely bogus. Yeah. All people have to do is not comply, and this thing falls flat on its face. And I am convinced that that is what's going to happen.
Well, Neil, I hope you're right, and we'll discuss this on the show. Maybe there's still some fight left in the UK. I don't know about Canada, but the last poll I saw, Mark Carney is more popular than ever. And is there something intellectually wrong with Canadians? I'm beginning to wonder. But let's turn to the story of the month, the story of the week again, because we don't know what's going to happen at Universal Ostrich Farms. I'm in constant contact with Katie Passatney, the farm spokeswoman, and who I have called an icon of Canadian freedom. She is now, like Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, she's an icon of Canadian freedom because she has put everything on the line to fight for not just 399 ostriches, not just her farm, not just her family, but for Canadian values, for Canadian rights, for the right to own property that can't be violated at any time by the federal government. And the federal government continues to violate their property. The CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is camping out on their property. And you say, is that legal? Well, the government doesn't live by the rule of law anymore. There is no rule of law in Canada. It's whatever the government says the law is. Just like other states in history where the government of the day decided what the law is. So if they want to camp out there and not feed those birds or feed them something they shouldn't be feeding them, the government of Canada says, go ahead and do it. We're not going to stop you. You can do whatever you want. But people are rising up against this noxious idea that the state can violate your private property at any time, steal your livestock and kill it, and destroy your livelihood, just like they have done or are trying to do with Chris Barber, trying to confiscate his truck. Look at the similarity. This is all about government overreach. And that's a term that sounds a little too understated for me. This is about government tyranny. That's all this is about.
Not only brings us together, but it helps us heal too. So you're all welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. You know, I texted Tamara as soon as I thought things were unraveling last week at the farm. Tamara said she was going to do her best to get there. What a fantastic woman! What a hero for Canada. She got there for Farm Aid, which continues today, by the way, at the farm. And I hope to get an update from Katie on that later today or tomorrow. But I want to turn to another aspect. Of course, the experts, and I'm not going to show you this Globe and Mail article. The experts, you know who the experts are? Those are people who agree with the Liberal government. That's the definition of expert today. I'm an expert because I agree with the Liberal government and its narrative on this or that issue. And the experts in the Globe and Mail article, and I won't bother showing it to you, said the risk of any sort of avian flu outbreak or contamination is very, very low. Nonetheless, they should kill the birds anyway. No rhyme or reason for it. Why should they? Because it's going, if they test those birds, it's going to show that CFIA is an incompetent organization, a politicized organization that is only concerned about serving big pharma and is not concerned about serving Canadians anymore. And you look at these goofs running around in their hazmat suits, it is outrageous. But here's another thing that's outrageous. Remember, we showed this to you last week. And this, of course, is another expert that the CBC uses as one of their voices of the scientific world. And they say in this clip, this woman, Dr. Angela Rasmussen, has no political axe to grind at all. See this? Listen to her. This is another expert, another authority on why these ostriches should be killed, and essentially, by saying so, why private property rights are non-existent in Canada, and why the government should trample over the rights of any farmer who chooses to do so.
Outbreaks with what's called the stamping out policy or mandatory depopulation of flocks that have been infected. So this is really both scientifically and legally, I think, the right thing to do to reduce the risk as much as we can.
You're a leading expert in this field. You have no political agenda when it comes to analyzing science. So
she has no political agenda when it comes to analyzing science.
Use something we heard from the spokesperson for the farm saying that these birds have been healthy for more than 200 days, that they're probably building immunity to avian flu, and therefore not only should they not be culled, but we should actually be preserving these ostriches. When you hear that, what's your reaction?
Well, my reaction to that is that it's not really accurate. So in ostriches, disease severity is based on how old the birds are, and these are all older birds. Older birds tend to not get very sick when they are infected with avian flu, at least in the few experiments that have been done with this and in our observations at different ostrich outbreaks. So you can't really tell if the ostriches are sick just by looking at them. You also can't make the assumption that they're going to develop protective immunity against a reinfection because often these older ostriches that don't get very sick don't develop antibodies against the virus. So we actually don't really know if these birds do have protective immunity if they had been infected before. We just have to assume that they could have been infected and they may still be infected.
All right. Well, with all the claims that are out there, it's really...
Yeah, with all the claims, there she is giving us the finger. So that's Angela Rasmussen. And she goes, and get this. Viva Fry, who's been a guest on this show, and I've been a guest on his, challenged Dr. Angela Rasmussen to a debate to come on his show and explain what in hell she's talking about. So here's Dr. Angela Rasmussen explaining why she doesn't want to debate or talk about anything to people like Viva Fry, or presumably David Creighton, or I'm sure Katie Passatney, because she knows everything. And she's not even a Canadian. Last but not least, I am American. I'm not scared of right-wing propagandists like you. She's saying this about Viva Fry. But I am determined not to let you do to Canada what you have done to my home country. Public health laws are for all Canadians' health and safety. Rejecting them endangers all Canadians. Once again, she is dense to the issue here. There is no health and safety issue from these birds. She knows that. She's in the government's pocket, and she does have an agenda. Clearly, she has an agenda. There's more of the good Angela Rasmussen. I'm not uncomfortable with an interview. I don't wish to contribute to anti-government extremist propaganda that imposes the will of a few on Canada's health, food security economy, and $2 billion poultry export market. So she has no political axe to grind. None at all, even though if you go to her X site, she says she's a cheerleader for vaccines. So clearly she does have a political axe to grind, and she's stated that unequivocally in these posts on X. Now let's see a little more of what's happening at the farm here, because as I said, the CFIA is going around like the clown show they are, making things miserable, occupying a farm. You know, and I thought about this morning, folks. Remember how the critics or the propagandists for Justin Trudeau called the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa an occupation? Even though everybody was free to go to work, everybody was free to keep on living their lives. I know I was there for almost every day of it. But that was called an occupation. And we should have thought like how the Germans occupied Paris. They don't even see the irony of this. The CFIA is occupying a private farm. Even though the Supreme Court of Canada has said there's a stay on the execution of the birds, an interim stay until they decide whether they hear the case. So that should mean clear out, CFIA. We're back to a decision-making process. The CFIA doesn't understand, they understand the rule of law. They ignore it. The Carney government just ignores the rule of law because it doesn't exist in Canada anymore. The law is whatever the Liberal government says it is from a day-to-day basis. And they'll find a judge to back them up because they've all been appointed by Liberals. So they'll find a judge to back them up, and the rule of law means nothing in this country anymore. Private property rights are non-existent. Farmers have no rights. They are the criminals. And this is exactly what Katie was saying the other day when she was on this show. The government views the farmers. They view the homeowners as the criminals. They've turned morality and legality on its head. We are living in a country where black is white. And that's exactly why they think they can get away with this. So here's Katie's mother explaining why the CFIA is not getting it, why they should not be looking after these birds, because they're not looking after the birds.
And then there's the throat hole. You do not get anything into the first hole. That's going directly into the lungs. Any water in there will kill the ant. You have to put the tube through the second hold, holding her head up. It'll take two people. We usually have one person hold the head up. The other person puts down the tube, hang on to the bottom of the beak and the tube at the same time. The other person, so that you're not cutting off their airways. Don't hold the beak tight because they still got to breathe here. So hold the tube in the bottom of the beak. The other person is going to hold the tube up. While the person holds the head up, you have to hold the neck up. Now, once that is emptied, completely emptied, then you can pull the tube out. But you have to make sure it's done. Then you can pull the tube out. Now, if the hand is not lifting up her head or holding her head at this time, you have to maintain the head up at all times or all the water will run out of the neck. And hold it up for, you have to make sure for a period of 5 minutes so that all the water stays down before you let go of the head.
So Ben right now is agreeing.
The whole bag. That whole bag.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll take the tuber back here. This end because you don't need that. You don't need any more today. And then they have to. Yeah, you go down. That's right.
Just to be clear, you said you wouldn't, and that should almost really be the energy it needs to pull.
And does the CFIA understand anything about looking after, caring for animals? How did these people ever get jobs? What are they doing there in the first place? As I said, the Carney government sent them there to enforce its decree, not the law, to enforce its decree on these farmers. And they want to make life as difficult for them. And who knows, maybe the plan is to kill off one ostrich at a time through various means. Because what if you think this is justice, if the Supreme Court can say, okay, freeze, and the CFIA continues to stay there, we don't have property rights anymore. Farmers have no rights. They've lost those rights. And this is extremely sad. Here's a little more from Katie.
Ask for testing. We are not defying an order. We are asking for the right thing to be done. These animals to have testing done to prove their health. And that is all we've been asking for. 256 days, happy, healthy, incredible herd immunity ostriches that are sitting corralled, being punished for being alive by Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And we're being punished as a family for wanting these animals to be tested to prove their health before they're destroyed and to protect them like we have done for the last 35 years. I just had some more intel information that Canadian Food Inspection Agency, I know you're listening, and you're calling around Vernon looking for bobcat rentals and tarps to line the hole that you're planning on taking all of these healthy animals, destroying and then burying them in a hole lined with tarps that are not biodegradable, tarps that are going to hold what you consider is going to be the most virulent threat of avian influenza in Canada, as to what you say. And where's all that material going? Where's all that biohazardous waste going? It's going to be by our spring water. It's going to be in our groundwater. Where is it going? What is your plan? So I'm putting a public plea out in Vernon, please, and Kelowna and surrounding areas to call your brother and sister companies. Call each other. Let's band together to protect life and choose life today over death. Let's choose science over speculation. Let's get these animals tested. That's all we've asked for, is for these animals to be tested to prove their health. I am asking you all to rise up. We protect each other. It's what we do in Canada. And this is going to be one of the most beautiful displays of what can happen when we all come together and what we are capable of. Do not sell large amount of tarps to Canadian Food Inspection Agency. If somebody is buying a large amount of tarps, question what they're buying them for. Please do not rent out any equipment, any more equipment. And if you have got a phone call like Firmco had, And FirmCo chose the right path. They chose to be on the right side of history and protect life. They said, no, we're not renting you bobcats and we're not going to sell you tarps. So you message me if you've been contacted, and I will make sure that everybody knows that you are part of being a hero. You are a hero on this journey, and you're going to protect so many lives. Imagine this, 120,000 pounds. That's what they're about. That's what they want to kill. 120,000 pounds of healthy animals.
It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And every point Katie raises here is completely valid and should be relevant to all of the people who live in the area. Do these people even think about what they're doing? Does the CFIA even think about what they're doing? It appears to be a grossly incompetent organization. They want to stuff all of these animals into the ground with tarp, which is not going to go away anytime soon. And if these animals are contaminated, like the CFIA claims to believe, then it's going to create another health problem. This is a government that is so incredibly moronic that there are scarcely words to describe it.
Will lay and not decay in these lined, tarped burial spots on the back of our property that we hay. The property where these animals have lived for 35 years.
Oh, Katie.
That will be their resting space. The property that they've grown up to know and feel safe on because they've been protected by our family. So please, it's a public plea, do not rent out any equipment. Ask for testing. We are not defying an order. We are asking for the right thing to be done. These animals to have testing done to prove their health. And that is all we've been asking for. These animals will be inhumanely killed and inhumanely disposed of, putting also our waterways and our environmental aspect at risk by supposedly this most contaminated material just sitting in the ground within tarps. So I love all of you very much. It's been a long journey. There's emotional times, there's moments of strength and laughter, and so many moments of just pure gratitude. But I'm putting out a public plea, please, right now for Vernon, British Columbia, and surrounding areas to do the right thing and just ask them to test the animals before we rent this equipment. Before we do this, we're asking for you to test these animals for their health. We're asking you to do the right thing and not destroy life today. Thank you for being on this journey, and I love you very much.
I love you too. Thank you for that message. Is that too much to ask? Is it too much to ask that these birds be tested before any other local firm gets involved and facilitates this killing, this completely unnecessary killing? Now, Katie has said, and I asked her this specifically on Friday when she was on this show, and she got up very early in the morning to do that because it's 3 hours earlier in British Columbia than it is here in Ottawa. And I asked her, there have been reports that some of your supporters are harassing or threatening firms that might do business with the CFIA. Katie was quite explicit in saying supporters should not in any way threaten or harass, but spell out what this means and explain that by refusing, they will become heroes as well, because they'll put morality and real science ahead of the almighty dollar. And that's the message she's trying to get out there. So does any of this make sense to any of you? The only thing that in any way explains this irrational, unscientific, and bizarre behavior from the CFIA and the RCMP is that we have a government that's in lockstep with the WEF and that takes its orders from the World Health Organization. That means Canada is no longer sovereign. We're taking our marching orders from a United Nations organization that tells us what to do. Don't you wish we had a Canada that was independent again, that had its sovereignty back? We're not going to have that under Mark Carney because he's the ultimate internationalist, the ultimate globalist. And that's what Mark Carney's career has all been about. And that's what this violation of property rights in Edgewood, BC is all about. It's about the complete abrogation of foundational rights that made Canada free, that made us one of the great democracies. We are becoming like a third world dictatorship every day. And I listed them off today. We've got a growing deficit, a growing debt. We've got a prime minister who can't stay home for longer than 24 hours, who doesn't want to show up in question period because, quite frankly, he's being outclassed and outdone by the official opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre. We've got a gun law coming in that's going to confiscate the guns from legal law-abiding gun owners and will not touch the criminals who use illegal firearms to commit crimes. We've got hate laws coming in that will make it virtually impossible to write or to speak without being subject now to the Criminal Code of Canada. We've got digital currency on the horizon. We are living in a country that is transforming into a dictatorship day by day by day. Other countries have gone through this process. And when you're going through it, sometimes you don't realize the severity and the seriousness of what you're going through. It's only afterwards that people say, oh, that's when we started to lose that's when our liberty was lost. And I remember when that happened, and I said, you know, that seems to be contrary to our foundational rights. A dictatorship is a gradual process. And we're going through that process right now. So I take heart from what Neil Oliver said. Let's fight back on digital ID. But my heart goes out to Katie, who I've come to just absolutely have such admiration and affection for. I don't want this crime to happen, and that's what it will be, is a crime in a land that doesn't have the rule of law extant. We need to fight back with all our resolve. And anything can happen tomorrow. The government workers are back on the job, and these people don't. They won't do the dirty deed on a Sunday because, hey, they're on vacation. That's their day off. Well, Universal Ostrich Farms doesn't get any days off anymore. Every day is a fight against this Carney government, this Marxist Carney government. And we'll be watching tomorrow to see what happens. And I encourage everybody who's in the vicinity. What about these broadcasters who are in BC? Get down there. Maybe you won't get the highest ratings that you want from covering this story, but get off your ass and get down to that farm and cover this story. I'm sick of seeing propagandists ignore this story because they think it might hurt their viewing. If you're independent media, get to that farm if you can. If you're a supporter, get to that farm if you can. Today, enjoy the farm aid, but be there when the CFIA goons do what they think they have a right to do, but they don't. Just going to show the store, and I'll be right back. Thanks for watching today, folks, and we will be vigilant in our reporting of this event, of this story. And as I said, I encourage everybody who can report on it to do so. This is not just about one farm or one family. It's about all of our freedoms. I have to keep saying that because for some people, the penny has not dropped. And I think we need to do that. Thank you for watching today. And we'll be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. Get to church today, get to temple, get to synagogue if you can. I've given you enough time. I have enough time. God bless this country. God bless our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion, our freedom to resist. And that's what we need to continue to do. Resolve to resist this incredible violation of democratic rights that's going on right now in British Columbia. We'll be back again tomorrow. God bless this country. Godspeed to all of you. I'm David Creighton. I've been broadcasting to you live from Ottawa.